King Aethelred of Wessex reigned from 865 until his death in 871. His reign, though short, came at a crucial time in the history of Anglo-Saxon England, when the threat of Viking invasions was at its height, and the political and military landscape was shaped by both internal and external forces. Aethelred was born around 840, the son of King Aethelwulf of Wessex and his first wife, Wulfrun. Aethelwulf was a significant figure in Anglo-Saxon history, known for his leadership in defending Wessex against Viking raids, and for his role in furthering the Christianization of southern England. Aethelred was part of the royal family that had already faced increasing pressure from Viking raids, particularly in the early 9th century, and was positioned to inherit the throne during one of the most turbulent periods in English history. Upon Aethelwulf's death in 856, Aethelred's older brother, Aethelbald, succeeded to the throne, but his reign was short and marred by internal family strife, particularly regarding Aethelbald's marriage to Judith, the daughter of Charles the Bald, King of West Francia. Aethelbald's untimely death in 860 brought Ethelbert, another of Aethelwulf's sons, to the throne. But Ethelbert's reign was also short-lived, ending with his death in 865. This paved the way for Aethelred to ascend the throne of Wessex in the same year. The political situation in Wessex during Aethelred's ascent was highly unstable, with the kingdom still divided among Aethelwulf's sons, and the ongoing threat from Viking forces intensifying. Aethelred's succession, therefore, was not just a matter of dynastic transition, but also a critical moment in the ongoing struggle for control over Wessex, which was being increasingly tested by external forces. Aethelred became king in 865, but the year was also marked by the arrival of the so-called Great Heathen Army in East Anglia, a massive Viking force that would significantly impact the political landscape of England. The Viking army, led by prominent Viking warlords, including Ivar the Boneless, Ubba, and other sons of Ragnar Lodbrok, landed in East Anglia in late 865, and their presence quickly posed a grave threat to all the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The Viking army's arrival shifted the balance of power across the British Isles. Unlike previous Viking raids, which had been more sporadic, the Great Heathen Army's goal was conquest. After their successful campaign in East Anglia, the Vikings quickly moved into Northumbria and Mercia, further destabilizing the political situation in England. The Viking invasion was no longer a series of raids, but a full-scale military campaign aimed at conquering English territories. Aethelred's reign began in a difficult context, with the Kingdom of Wessex facing a major external threat from the Viking invaders. It is important to note that Aethelred was not alone in defending his kingdom. He had his brother, Alfred, who would later be known as Alfred the Great, to assist him in matters of both governance and military strategy, though Aethelred was the reigning monarch. The efforts of Aethelred and Alfred were crucial in maintaining Wessex's resistance to the Viking onslaught. The year 865 marked the beginning of intense military engagement between the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings. Aethelred's immediate challenge was to defend Wessex from the ongoing invasions. The Viking army, after its initial success in East Anglia, turned its attention to Northumbria and eventually to the Kingdom of Mercia. However, the Kingdom of Wessex, under Aethelred's leadership, remained one of the last independent Anglo-Saxon kingdoms standing, and the Vikings set their sights on it. The first major confrontation between Aethelred's forces and the Vikings occurred in 866, when the Great Heathen Army attacked York, a key city in Northumbria. After the fall of York, the Vikings moved southward. Aethelred's military strategy at this time is somewhat unclear, as historical records do not provide extensive details about his exact tactics. However, it is likely that Aethelred worked closely with his brother Alfred and the Wessex nobility to organize resistance against the Viking forces. By 868, Aethelred had made a strategic alliance with the Mercians to confront the Viking threat together. The Viking army, however, continued to demonstrate its strength, defeating the combined forces of Wessex and Mercia in several battles. Aethelred and Alfred's forces were often unable to fully rout the Vikings, who continued to move through the kingdom, harrying Anglo-Saxon territories and forcing the Anglo-Saxon kings to continually retreat. One of the most significant military engagements during Aethelred's reign was the Battle of Ashdown in 871. The battle took place in January of that year, and it marked a critical point in the defense of Wessex. Aethelred and his brother Alfred, leading the Wessex army, faced off against the Viking invaders, who had amassed a considerable force under the leadership of Ivar the Boneless and his brothers. The Battle of Ashdown was a key moment in the Viking invasions of England. The battle was fought in the region between Berkshire and Hampshire, and it was one of the first major victories for the Anglo-Saxons in the ongoing conflict. Aethelred and Alfred managed to defeat the Viking army at Ashdown, forcing the Vikings to retreat. The victory at Ashdown was significant, as it showed that the Anglo-Saxons, under Aethelred's leadership, were capable of repelling the Viking invaders. However, the victory was short-lived. Although the Anglo-Saxons won the battle, the Viking forces remained a formidable threat, and the Viking leaders were far from defeated. The subsequent months saw further battles and skirmishes between Aethelred's forces and the Vikings, and the conflict remained unresolved. The Vikings, after regrouping, continued their campaign, and by the end of 871, they had once again overwhelmed several of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. King Aethelred's reign came to a tragic and untimely end in 871. After his victory at Ashdown, he was once again confronted by Viking forces, and his health began to deteriorate rapidly due to the constant strain of battle. Aethelred died in April 871, likely as a result of illness or exhaustion. His death left the kingdom of Wessex in a state of uncertainty, and the throne passed to his younger brother, Alfred, who would go on to become one of England's greatest monarchs. Aethelred's death was a significant moment in the history of Wessex. Although his reign was short, Aethelred had done much to slow the Viking advance and to ensure that Wessex remained a powerful force in southern England. His death paved the way for Alfred, who would go on to secure a lasting victory over the Vikings and establish a more permanent Anglo-Saxon presence in England. Though Aethelred's reign was short and marked by military struggle, it played an important role in the broader context of the Viking invasions. His reign was characterized by his efforts to defend Wessex from the Vikings and his alliance with the Mercians, as well as his ability to win the Battle of Ashdown. Aethelred's leadership, while not as famous as that of his brother Alfred, set the stage for the successes that would follow in the later years of the 9th century. Aethelred's reign also highlighted the importance of the Wessex monarchy in the defense of England against the Viking threat. While Aethelred's military campaigns were often unsuccessful, they demonstrated the kingdom's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. His reign was marked by constant military action, and his efforts ensured that Wessex remained a significant force in the resistance against the Viking invaders. While Aethelred was unable to fully defeat the Viking invaders, his efforts ensured that his brother Alfred would inherit a kingdom that was still capable of resisting Viking rule. Alfred's military reforms and his eventual triumph over the Vikings would be the culmination of the efforts begun during Aethelred's reign. King Aethelred of Wessex may not be as well known as other figures in Anglo-Saxon history, but his brief reign was significant in the context of the Viking invasions of England. Aethelred's military leadership, particularly during the Battle of Ashdown, helped to slow the Viking advance and ensured that Wessex remained a key player in the struggle for control of England. His untimely death in 871 paved the way for his brother Alfred's eventual ascension to the throne, and it was Alfred who would go on to secure a lasting victory against the Vikings. In this way, Aethelred's reign, though short and often overshadowed by the achievements of others, was an important chapter in the history of Wessex and the eventual unification of England.